Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this month's Cerkl product webinar, Tap into Cerkl's new broadcast tools. We're so excited to have you guys here today.
I'm Sam, and I'm the lead designer here at Cerkl, and been a part of a few of these webinars before. This is probably like our fourth one together, right?
Yeah.
And fun fact, this is a picture of me right before I went skydiving for the first time. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And I'm pretty sure they copied my hand for that emoji there. So
it's important.
Pretty dead on.
Yeah, your hand modeling career is something that we don't highlight enough here at Cerkl. And my name is Rachel Foles, and I'm the director of product. And this photo here is taken of me at the Dayton Children's Symphony. They did Harry Potter music pretty much the Sunday before everything that happened with COVID-19 hit. So this was the last known picture of me in the wild here with my Harry Potter.
This is before Corona.
Yes,
BC.
it's BC, and that's a sorting hat, despite my thinking it is something else. So we're really, really excited to have you guys here. We have a lot to show you today, and I think that you'll be really happy that you decided to spend this time with us.
I'll be manning the QA over here. So if you do have a question throughout the webinar, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom link there. I believe that the UI has changed a little bit, but you are looking for the same icon. It might just be in a different place. So you can submit a question and I'll see it pop up on my screen. If we don't get to it in the moment, then we'll make sure to save time at the end and go over all the questions that we didn't get to.
All right, so we've been running nonstop since we last spoke to you in January, and we have so much new cool stuff to show you. So here's how today's gonna go. First, we're gonna show off some of the new tools we have for building segments, managing audiences, and targeting your newsletter. Then we're gonna tell you about some maintenance improvements we've made, things like adding single sign-on and a little bit of a speed boost to insights. After that, we're gonna share some experience improvements we made, including our newsletter preferences, new custom fonts options, subscriber details, individual subscriber metrics, and new footer icon offerings. And then we're gonna give you a very, very sneaky peek of our big next step. And we'll take your questions.
We have a question here that says, I cannot hear you.
Okay, is anyone else in the audience having any trouble hearing us? Just wanna make sure that we're good to go. If you could chat us and let us know.
Make sure you're not on mute.
Okay.
We have, yep, can hear just fine, thanks.
Okay.
Audio's okay. So if you cannot hear us, which I don't know why I'm trying to explain what to do, all right, let's just continue on this.
Yeah, so I just suggest maybe you turn it up a little bit and we'll try to speak up a little bit. All right, segments are such a big part of how our communicators are igniting their audience. And we've kind of known all along that we had a lot of work to do and some improvements that we could make. And we've learned a lot over the last 6 months. So we've been working all spring to make big sweeping improvements to this flow for you. And I'm really excited to share what's new with you now. So going forward, we're gonna have two types of segments. There are gonna be dynamic segments and manual. Dynamic segments are lists that are built using the audience member attributes that you could send to Cerkl via an integration. This is like birthday, location, reporting manager. And even if you're not integrated, we have some new stuff for you. And then manual lists are the lists that you generate off Cerkl and upload. These things are happening. That's how you're doing it now today for the most part.
Yeah, and I think this is a really cool update because this seemed to be somewhere that we were just lacking overall in our product. Our segments before seemed pretty flat, where you're just creating buckets and naming them and throwing people in there. So this is really giving them a useful way to build audiences and to communicate to different groups of people.
And to keep those audiences in sync, especially with dynamic segments. So welcome to dynamic segments. This is coming very, very soon to a Cerkl.
Like trumpets in the background.
That's how I felt when we made it. I'm very excited about this because being a former communicator myself, I know how hard it is to keep your lists and data in sync. So you're going to be able to use our new dynamic segment builder to create audiences based on audience attributes. I know I keep saying that word. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is in the coming slides. So maybe you want to gather up all of your June birthdays and send them a special message, or create cohort groups based on start date. With dynamic segments, these actions are easy.
So this is the creator, the actual UI of it, and this is living under the Segments tab in Audience Manager. So you'll be able, when this is released, which we're still developing it currently, but you'll be able to click on Create New Segment, and this is where it'll take you. It has a very similar layout to Blast if you use that. So you'll be able to name the segment in the top left, and you'll have your left side or the right side panel there, which is where the preview will be generated. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But for the example today, we're going to use an office reference. Fun fact about the Cerkl team: we came in. Did we come in first?
We came in third, but we only got one question wrong, and it was my fault.
And an office trivia night before BC. So we love The Office, and we're excited about this example that we're presenting. So we're going to be talking about how to build the Scranton sales reps dynamic segment. And we're going to focus specifically in on this building block here, which we call the rule set. You go ahead and click. So this rule set is what you're using to actually compose the segment that you want. And it's broken up into 3 parts. And I believe, Rachel, you can address the first one here.
Yeah, so it all starts with the data attribute. That's what we're calling this first column. This is the data that the integration has shared with Cerkl. There's 36 available fields, but there are even more than that, just depending on how you want to set it up. We have 36 standard buckets of information we think you guys might want to use, but you have other things that you could use outside of that. You don't have to use them all, just the stuff that makes sense to you. So an example of an attribute is job title. So that's the one we'll be focusing on for the first part of our rule, but there are so many more. Looking at this, these are all of the standard ones that you'd be able to add if you were integrated, and some of them will even be available through our new uploader as well.
Think about all the different audiences and segments that you could build using all of those specific data attributes too.
Absolutely.
It's pretty powerful. So the second piece of the rule here is the operator, and this one, on a lot of systems that I've seen, a lot of systems that we've used, it feels very mathy.
Yeah.
It feels like less than or equal to, greater than or equal to.
The cosine button.
Yeah, it's a little overwhelming, and it's hard to maybe wrap your head around at first what you're actually trying to do. So the one thing we wanted to focus on here was using natural language so that each rule read out basically what you're trying to accomplish. So right now we're saying that the job title is, and then the next column here is value, but here's some other examples of operators. So the most common one is going to be the is and the is not. So that's either saying something is X or something is not Y.
Right. So if you want to exclude something, you might use is not.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to leave it open-ended, it might be is blank.
Yeah. So then some of the other ones here: contains, does not contain, starts with, ends with. That's all for maybe emails or names specifically if you want to exclude. Or include if the name started with an S for some reason, if you want all the S names. Mm-hmm. I don't know what segment that would be, but we could do it here. And then if you click one more time,
sure.
There's also date-specific operators. So this is for stuff like date subscribed or hire date or any of those date attributes.
Right, or birthday is or on or before June 31st to get the first 2 quarters of birthdays.
Yeah, and this is the one that it felt specifically mathy. When I was looking at some other examples, it was like date is less than or equal to, and it's like that just doesn't feel right. So when we changed it to this natural language of on or before or on or after, in the hopes that it would make it a little more clarifying what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah, so the last thing I'm talking about here is the value. That's the third box there, and the value is just like the operator is dependent on the data attribute and what kind of data you're working with. So in this case, job title, you could have, I mean, hundreds of job titles, thousands of job titles. So what you're gonna want to input a string of characters that matches any data that you have. So in this case, if you click in, we're gonna input sales representative. So anybody that has a job title of sales representative is going to come back in this list. And then what's an example of something? So like, hire date, any kind of date, you're selecting from a date picker, and we'll format that date for you. So it depends on what type of data you're working with is really what's going to fill that value spot.
Right, but we really try to make it easy to find what you're looking for and to experiment a little bit to try to get to the right answer. So all 3 of these pieces together make a rule, and that rule is saying we're going to go out and say who makes up this list. So you can sync preview to kind of see.
This is my bad joke, so I'm sure everybody's dying laughing out there, even though we haven't told it. But this is how I pictured the sync preview button. It was kind of like Cerkl was like getting ready to go fetch your list for you. So it's like, can you use your dog voice real quick?
I'm I'm going to go get the list. I'm going to go get the list.
So you're basically throwing a ball out there with your rules, and you're saying, hey, go fetch this list for me. And then Cerkl is going to do all that work for you and bring back a list in a preview, which you're seeing now.
Right. And Cerkl is a very good boy. So it's went and fetched all of the people who match your rule criteria. Those are previewed right here on your screen. Should really help you understand if the rules you've created get you the list of audience members that you were desiring when you created that rule. This was a big improvement over a lot of the systems we looked at from competitors, but also other systems that deal in big people lists. This was the piece that I felt like was missing across the board was I did this thing that feels a little unfamiliar to me. How did that affect the list of people? And this, like that piece was missing over and over again. So I think this should really help you guys.
It's a lot lower risk than a lot of those other systems. You had to actually create the segment. And that's a little scary because you're like, I don't know what's going to happen here. This might bring back 10,000 people or it might bring back 0 people. I don't know what's going to happen. So this preview button is to reduce the risk of what you're doing and give you a little more reassurance that the rules that you're creating are giving you the people that you want to find.
So taking it back to the office, here's our list of sales reps. We have Jim, we have Dwight, and we have Andy, and they're all 3 sales reps. That is what we decided. We said job title is sales representative. All 3 of these gentlemen have that job title.
So here's where you can get kind of fancy with it. So it's cool to be able to build one rule and just find people with a specific attribute about them. But when you start combining attributes or conjoining attributes, that's when it gets really powerful. So you can now add another statement to the rule set here, and you can either divide it with an and statement or an or statement. And I know this is another part where it gets a little tricky and hard to understand, but the best way to describe it is that and means that both rules must be true, and or means that either condition can be true. So you can go ahead and continue there. In this case, we added an and statement, and then we filled out the rule below to be location 3, which is, how do you want to explain that?
Right, so there's different levels of locations if you're integrated. So you can decide however you want to be structured depending on if you want to be worldwide and then North America and then US and then Ohio and then Cincinnati, or you can even be more specific if you are dealing in a small health system, let's say, and it's East Campus, West Campus, and then the next level might be the street and the next level might be the building or the college that you serve, and then maybe the floor. So it really just gives you some places to define locations so they're apples to apples comparison. But in the Athos example here, we just have a Scranton.
Yeah, so location 3 is serving a city pretty much.
Yes.
And if you don't watch The Office, the actual location of the office is in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So.
Right. So we're looking for all of our sales reps in Scranton.
And it's time to go fetch the ball now.
So he got the stick. Now he's going to get the ball. I'm going to get the ball. I'm going to get the ball. So here are the results for our Scranton sales reps. And you can see the list that we had before had been narrowed a bit. And to bring it to those of you who like The Office, we have Jim, and he's in Scranton, as is Dwight, but Andy's dropped off of our rule because he's in Stamford, so his location is not set.
Yeah, and that's because it's an and statement. So he is a sales representative, but he is not from Scranton.
That's correct.
But in The Office, he transfers to Scranton in season 3, something along those lines. But he does transfer to Scranton, so now he would be a part of that dynamic segment.
Right, and that's a really cool thing about dynamic segments that we may not have been able to let land yet, is that as your integration syncs or your data changes, we're going to add the new audience members that match that existing criteria to these segments. That's what makes them dynamic. The rules remain the same, but the people can flow in and out as the data says or as their career and life with your organization changes. You don't have to remake the segment over and over again. The attributes change, that's the list. So that's how it can benefit you. Andy, once in Stamford, now he's in Scranton. And when your integration syncs or you upload new data, he's automatically moved into that Scranton sales rep list. But even beyond that,
the opposite's true also, right?
Right. And so if Dwight is no longer a sales rep and he's, finally the regional manager, as he's always dreamed of, we're keeping an eye on your list. You don't have to worry about where's Dwight and do we move him. If your integration syncs, you're good to go. Someone got a promotion. He's no longer in that list, and maybe he's in a different list that's regional manager specific.
And if you follow along with The Office, Dwight did not last as regional manager very long. He was moved back to sales representative. So then he is now back a part of that list.
Right.
And nothing changed except for the rule updated, basically.
But the communicator in charge of Athos here, they didn't have to do anything.
Very cool. And then all of these people in the sales or Scranton sales reps list are going to receive communication from the appropriate people. And in this case, it's coming from Michael Scott talking about the stakeholders meeting in New York. We do have one question here. It says, is my integration to grad leaders what you're referring to as integrated? There are so many fields available.
I'll have to have Maddie talk to you specifically about your integration with grad leaders. This is specific to people integration. So we're talking about audience specific data. I don't know what the nature of your particular grad leaders integration is, but we also are adding ways that even if you're uploading lists manually, for instance, and you still are managing your audience via our current uploader, you're not losing that ability to upload lists. We're just calling that manual segments. So I will make sure to follow up with you about your integration in particular. But, you know, we knew that this was kind of two sides of the same coin. Everyone wants those dynamic segments, but there's still those times where you have a list of people in some other system. You've got to bring it into Cerkl. These people are federated together from any variety of things. So we wanted to give people more opportunity here. So we're keeping manual segments in place where you'll be able to download any list and upload it, but we're adding some additional attributes to everyone. So you'll have 11 attributes that you'll be able to use on any list to be able to use dynamic segments, even if you don't have an integration with that particular system. Dynamic and manual segments are going to be released in the coming weeks. So I would keep an eye on the Inner Cerkl for updates. And if you want to sign up for the Inner Cerkl and you're not already, just let me know. It's an email that you get about once a week.
And then here's an example of the new list import that would be used for a manual segment. So right now in Cerkl, the only columns that are available are email, first name, and last name. Whereas now we're adding, what is it, 8 more available fields, including birth date, gender, hire date, phone number, just other things that paint the picture of who you're communicating with. And it's good to be available in the import list or the manual segments because not everybody has the ability to be integrated. They don't have that nice clean data set that they're working with, or, you know, like they're not ready for that.
Right. And it can really help you begin to maximize other lists that you might have outside of your integration as well. Okay, so this next one, child audience controls, may not be for everyone. So we'll keep it pretty brief, but if the words parent or child Cerkl mean anything to you, this would be a good time to listen up. So just last week, we added a way for admins of parent circles to create and share segment-based audiences. It's called child audiences. So if you're the admin of a parent circle, you're going to see this new icon. Sammy, did you circle it? Yep. Yeah, there it is.
Up in the top right if you didn't see that transition.
Yeah, it's up in the top bar of your Cerkl. That button's going to take you to child management. Now we're just getting this section fleshed out, and more options for managing child circles are going to be coming. But here's where you can take control of a child Cerkl audience. You'll just select which segments you want to give them and you're done. So if you want to take control of a child's audience or you're standing up a new child, you can define their audience based on segments that you created dynamically or manually. But just note that if you take control of a child audience, that existing audience is going to be wiped out and you're going to start a new audience for them.
Yeah, so let's pull back in this example. We created the Scranton sales reps dynamic segment, and now we want to use that as a child audience on Athos sales. So Athos sales, once we add that dynamic segment as their audience, now Jim, Dwight, and Andy will all be a part of that child Cerkl's audience.
Right, without having to go through, make a new integration or create a new list. You're using that dynamic segment creator to create these and cascade them down to the children. It gives you a lot more flexibility, and that dynamic segment will update automatically or however you're updating your stuff, and that will all stay in sync. And then you'll have better visibility into the makeup of a child Cerkl's audience, if that's a concern for your org.
That was actually a question we had, was does the dynamic segment, when it updates, does it update the child audience?
It does.
That's very cool.
All right, newsletter targeting. This is our last piece kind of on segments, and then we're going to move through some other improvements. So using your segments, you can now add an additional layer of control to who gets your newsletter. This option is really useful for those who are rolling out the newsletter digest for the first time and want to control when different groups start, or maybe you want to roll back a little bit and you're taking a pause and you want to kind of drip it back out as we're kind of coming out of COVID. And you're being kind of communication conscious, you might think about re-rolling out a different way. So here's how it works. Oh, sorry, Sammy, this one's you.
Oh, it's all good. So this is gonna be found in the settings section under the email newsletter tab, and it's under miscellaneous sending controls. So it's just a simple radio button option. There's two options, which the default is gonna be send based on opt-in status only. So that's based on whether someone has email newsletters and blast, or if they're blast only. Whereas now the second option here is to send based on opt-in status and segment. So that's just taking the opt-in status, and then you can also add that list of segments that you want to receive it. So this is basically an and statement where they have to meet both the opt-in status requirement and they have to be a part of the segments that you're sending to, or that you've approved to send to.
So, and just to kind of rejigger it to make sure we got it under control here, send based on opt-in status only is absolutely what everyone's set to today. And that's kind of what it's been always. This is just another way to say opt-in status. And additionally, I only want my newsletter for this period to go to these segments. So it gives you just a little bit more control over the flow of messaging.
It's exciting to get to like this level of detail in a product. Like it's cool to get down to the nitty gritty like that.
Right, to be able to like capture those use cases in ways that make bigger sense for more people, I think is a really exciting stage that we've entered. So we know our client list is growing to include more Fortune 500 companies, and so we really needed to enrich our backend technology to support more secure and speed conscious use cases. So we have a few things to show you in that regard. There are too many passwords in our life. I have work passwords and home passwords and family passwords and social media. I even have password keepers.
The thing that's getting in the way of it is Face ID. Like it's so hard to remember a password anymore when you don't have Face ID on your phone. It's like, oh, I actually have to remember this thing. I can't just use my face to log in.
Right. And then like if the Face ID fails and you've only entered it one time, it all falls apart. So the good news is that we have a potential fix for that. If your organization uses an identity provider to log into internal systems, you may be able to use our new SSO integration to cut a few passwords out of your life, which I would celebrate. So you might have noticed our new gorgeous sign-on page. That's the work of Sammy over here. But that fix really wasn't cosmetic only. We needed a way to update to make the way for SSO or single sign-on. So the normal username and password way totally still exists, totally works, it's great, it's secure, it's awesome. But if you want to use an identity provider, we have a variety of new options. You could use systems like Google or Microsoft or any of the other ones listed on the screen above to log into your Cerkl team member account. If you're interested in turning on SSO, there's no additional cost or anything like that. It's just something you've got to do through Success. So just contact Success in the chat in the lower right-hand corner and let them know that you're interested in hearing more about single sign-on. And then maybe you've noticed that your insights are loading quicker. That's because we made some changes on our side to make things run faster. We're doing more of these optimization changes. They aren't something that we do a big blog release about, maybe you might notice because it's less frustrating, but we're really trying to pave the way for even more exciting insights enhancements in the coming months. And that's your first sneaky peeky.
And then this is what the engineers get excited about, like performance. That's it for them.
100%. They would love to do the Castle Run. All right. So at the end of the day, every communicator using Cerkl really does care about their audience and the experiences that they're having with your comms, your brand, your messages. So we put some time in enhancing those consumer-facing experiences in and out of Cerkl. We just want to make sure, because you guys may not see these things, that you have a chance to talk about them here. How are we doing on questions?
We're good.
All right. If you have any questions, Sam is standing by. Well, sitting by.
Any kind of blip on my computer is catching my attention.
Well, I can't imagine that insights graphic is helping.
Yeah. So newsletter preferences. This is a fun one because this is a user or a subscriber facing update. So audience members love setting their preferences. With broadcast newsletters, they can pick the topics that pique their interest, their preferred delivery date, time, and frequency, any authors they want to follow. So if a newsletter subscriber clicks update my preferences in the footer of their email, they're going to be taken here. So you can go ahead and click. So the first, this is a new layout here. So we're setting up in tabs, and the tabs include interest, delivery, authors, and account. So
not all of those are available, and everyone has the option to have all these available, but these are specific to what you've decided
your settings,
is cool for you. So we're showing you the full range of options, but your internal settings that you have set up through CS determine which ones of these are available. So
Good
nobody,
catch.
everything's
Yes.
cool.
We're not just going behind the curtain here and changing things.
Cool.
So yeah, so the interest one here, this was an interesting UI challenge because we have the ability to make interest more interesting to us and less interesting to us. So you can either include or exclude those topics from your newsletter. So what you're going to see here is, oops, sorry,
Too
you
soon.
go back.
You pointed.
Yeah, okay. So the top section here is the categories that your organization is talking about that the subscriber loves to hear about, they want to hear more about. So that's going to increase the algorithm that is using to send the newsletter to them, and it's going to send them more content regarding those categories. The middle section here is, I'm okay with hearing about it, I don't want to hear any more, any less. And then there's actually a bottom section, which I didn't include, I guess because it's negative, that is, I don't want to hear about this topic. So this is just more of a intuitive UI to understand what they're hearing more about, what they're okay with hearing about, what they don't want to hear anything about. So hopefully that increases that experience for them.
And one of the enhancements we're going to showcase for you here in a minute is individual subscriber metrics and subscriber details, where you're able actually to see their interest level on a given topic, both the ones that your organization have as your categories and ones that operate outside of that scheme. So you can really get a pulse check on what matters to people.
So moving over to the delivery tab, this feels like the heart of Cerkl, or what Cerkl like grew up as almost. This is where you can select the format and the delivery frequency and all the things that have to do with the newsletter specifically and how you receive it. And the cool thing that we added here is a summary of what has been selected. So on the right side there, you can see also written in natural language that this person has selected their newsletters set to be delivered in a traditional layout weekly on Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and they want to translate it from English to Spanish. So you can click again to get down there. The cool thing about the language option here is that we're using the Google Translation API to translate the newsletter delivery from whatever from the written language to the language that they're selecting. And I think that's a really cool feature to point out. The next tab here is authors. And this one is one that the majority of people probably don't have turned on or might not have turned on.
It just depends on if you have the show authors option turned on.
Yeah. So this is just giving them the ability to follow specific people. If someone's writing about all the stuff that they want to hear about, then they have the ability to follow them, and that will also increase their likelihood that they're going to receive a piece of content written by that person. And then the last thing is account. So this is more just like the general settings for your account, what you want your name to be, the email, if it is allowed, and then any privacy and subscription settings is also found there. Right, we can move on to custom fonts. This is a fun one as a designer.
I bet.
So you can go ahead and click and reveal this fun little graphic here. This is, so if you're a designer, and maybe if you're not a designer, you know that Comic Sans is a joke font, and a lot of people use it to like say what not to do with font. And this is a lot of popular brands that have been recreated using Comic Sans. It's pretty impressive that you can still tell what the brand is even without the font, but it just doesn't feel quite the same, does it?
No, it really doesn't. I think that it really demonstrates how much fonts matter. If you're a brand conscious organization, what a big impact that they can make.
Yeah, I would agree.
So if you do have an organizational font that you'd like to use in your digital storytelling, we do have a new feature for you. This might be the first time that you're hearing about it. Custom fonts allows you to set a font to be used in your broadcast newsletters by default on the content that you create in the content manager and then your blast. So this one is a little tricky, so it's really important to get it right to set your audience up for success. We're going to walk you through it here, and if you need more additional information, I'm sure that we can provide it for you. So if you want to use an organizational font, you need to be certain that it's going to be on every device. Web-only fonts, like the ones you can get from Google Fonts or something like DaFont, are not going to work. So we're talking to those of you who have machines in your network that you guys have put the TrueType font on as part of standing up those computers inside your organization. Because with email, the font actually has to be installed on each audience member's computer, which is kind of a funny thing, right? Actually on the hardware. And so chances are that the emails received on their phone are going to be using your fallback. So in our example, we're going to walk you through here. We're going to use the Cerkl font, which is Poppins, and that's going to be our default font. Once you have your default font, you're going to select a fallback for us to use if the device doesn't have your intended font. A good reference point when selecting your fallback is our list of web safe fonts. Ta-da! These web and email safe fonts work on most devices and systems. They should look pretty familiar to you. And if you don't want to mess around with a font not consistently being available, all of these options are good and readily available for you in custom fonts. So this is just a drop-down selection. If you're cool, if you say, you know what, our font is really nice, but we use Verdana as a fallback, and I'd be good if every newsletter arrived in Verdana, that's an option that you have in custom fonts. So once you have your default font, you select a fallback for us to use, and then
then you can select the generic family. And this is just common practice when writing CSS code, is to always have the fallback. Mm-hmm. And when we're speaking about web fonts, the two fallbacks are just sans serif and serif. And if you are a type nerd, you know that sans serif just means without serifs. And a serif is that little ornamentation on the end. I don't know if, yeah, there you go. You can highlight that. So common sans serif fonts would be like Roboto and Helvetica, where the serifs are the Georges and the Times New Romans of the world. So it's really, every font is one or the other. So whatever your custom font is and whatever your web safe fallback font is, you're going to want to just pick the category that it is, whether it's sans serif or serif.
Yep. So if you want to turn on custom fonts for your organization, you're going to go to Settings and then Branding and then scroll to Custom Fonts. And I bet you guys want to see how this looks. Isn't Poppins pretty?
That's why we showed it.
That's right. So here's a sample story with Poppins in place. And may I say, it is poppin'. So if I didn't have Poppins on my device, that's going to show Verdana, which would also look lovely as well. Whenever you get a Cerkl newsletter that's set to default, we use Roboto with a fallback to Arial, I believe, and then to sans serif. So there's also the default option, which you can always come back to. So,
and I think you can see like the personality that it provides just in this one story example. You know, it gives it a different vibe than just a generic font that everyone uses on the web.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for sure. All right.
So subscriber details is a new feature available in Audience Manager. And this is a spot to check on any audience member in your account. You can go ahead and show it here. So this little pop-up shows you their opt-in status, personalization level, newsletter sending day, what segments they belong to, and their interest. So this is a very helpful tool when diagnosing what's going on with any audience member. We've also included a quick view of their interest, and then you can check this display all types. In the screenshot, it is already checked, but this is a way to understand what they're interested in based on the organization categories that you have set up. So those are the 20 that you have in content controls. And then there's also the option to add manual categories when creating a piece of content. So this is just showing you what they're truly interested in hearing about. And this is a good, if you look at a lot of these and you see that everyone is interested in technology, maybe you should transition one of your less popular organization categories to technology so that you're getting more traction in that category.
Yeah, there's this is kind of the micro level. There's a macro level of this kind of same idea available to you in insights, but really, and that's in category opportunities. But this is when you're looking at an individual audience member and maybe trying to diagnose a little bit of engagement troubles, you might look at what categories they're choosing to engage with, or if you have personified in some way, to use a marketing term, that this person is the type of person we want to see more engagement from. Maybe this is a tool to look at to see what else they might be interested in.
We have a question on this slide.
Questions.
Will the new rule-based segments appear here?
Absolutely. So the dynamic segments will appear here as an option. where it says manual segments here, there'll be another additional option. There are no dynamic segments applied to this org, but there will be a dynamic segments option. You will not be able to edit the dynamic segments from this page here. You can change what segments a person is in from a manual segment perspective, but dynamic segments, because it's based on attributes and rules, those changes will need to be made in the dynamic segment builder, which there is a note on the new version of this that includes changes to this must be made in dynamic segments. But that's a great question. Thank you for asking. All right, so we're going to give you a little bit more insight into the content each audience member is receiving in your automated communications. This is our individual subscriber metrics. You can get to that. Actually, I'm going to show you two ways. Back here, if you click View Insights, so let's say I clicked Rachel Coleman and I clicked View Insights, this would also trigger individual subscriber metrics, or from anywhere in Insights that you click on a name, you're going to get to individual subscriber metrics from the subscribers tab. Ooh, that was a lot of S's.
Yeah.
Woo! Spice. So you're going to see a quick breakdown of the content that they've received over the last 4 weeks, how many times a story appeared in their newsletter, if they opened or click it. And it really should help with those questions all communicators get, all of us get them, about, I didn't see that. I didn't get it. And then you go and look and it's like, well, you got it 4 times and you opened it, but you didn't click it. That kind of thing really can help you give exact dates and answers to what people are seeing. So you can see from the screenshot that Sammy has included from my Inner Circle news that I received the notice about this webinar, but oddly, I didn't click it, but I did open it.
It's like you didn't need to click on it.
I didn't need to click it. I knew what I needed to know. So we know that, just 4 weeks of data isn't enough, and we totally get that. So in the coming months, we're going to be making some this is your second tip, big improvements to Insights that'll give you even more value. So stay tuned, stay with us. And then kind of finally wrapping up this part of the webinar, we know how important it is to get your eyeballs on those resources. You guys spend a lot of time and money developing resources for your staff and others. So we've added 7 new link icons that can be automatically included in the footer of your broadcast newsletters and blasts. So now you have another place to showcase all of those important, but often misplaced links like your intranet, Microsoft Teams, or Slack. So the 2 big ones I think for us were Teams and Slack, but there are a lot more available. So your benefits, HR, maybe you have a blog. This works for other people as well. Maybe video that isn't Vimeo or YouTube, it's another video provider, or just generally your intranet. So to kind of wrap that up, you can get to this by going to settings and then social links and adding them. We know that this is not an all-inclusive list and you guys want a lot more options in this regard. Keep telling us about those options. Keep talking to us about the challenges you're facing trying to get those eyeballs so we can help you guys do your best work. All right, so we have some time left, and I love talking about the future because as you can see, we've been very busy, but never too busy to not think about the big stuff that you guys want to get done, the stuff that you're trying to accomplish that's still challenging despite all of the investments in technology that you've made or the people that you have in place. There are still some things that are very difficult, and those are the things that really energize us, is thinking about solving those problems. So I want to tell you a little bit about the topic of next month's webinar and our next phase. I'd like to start here with a preview of our new Internet Personalization plugin. So we have always done channels. We've always offered opportunities for communicators who use Cerkl's intelligence to bring personalization and kind of content clarity to their given channels. And we've had Apply, which allows you to put personalized content on any site or intranet. But still, what we were hearing is that people were still hitting barriers with trying to get that stuff in place or trying to get the tech where it needs to be. So we decided to look at the tools that you guys were using and design our new Internet Personalization to work perfectly with SharePoint, Hapio, or any custom intranet. The first thing to note here is that new Internet Personalization is going to be a SharePoint app available in the SharePoint app source where you can just download it right onto your SharePoint site. We give you a key, you put it in. If you are an admin and able to add apps to your SharePoint, you can get this on there and never make a call to IT.
Yeah, it was super easy. We didn't even need to ask Quack how to do it, or who's the engineer.
I know.
It was like, just plug and play.
Right.
It's ready to go. It was on there. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's super cool. Another thing that we're bringing to this is you might have noticed in our newsletter redesign, we kind of brought in the concept of channel notifications. Here we're giving you those notifications. If you set something, if you give it a priority, like you do in the newsletter, those priorities are going to carry over to this new display for internet personalization, kind of giving them more places. We don't care about the channel an audience member wants to consume the content on. We want to give them consistent experiences throughout the whole thing, and to not bother and yell at them about things that they've already consumed.
Yeah, this would be a great way to use the new segments as well. If you need to communicate specifically to a group of people, you can just add that segment and send it out to all these different channels, and they're going to receive it in their notifications.
That's right. And so they'll have read and unread, and that's also something that could be missing. You know, you delete emails. I know I do. I love inbox zero. It's a thing that I strive for every day. But you delete those emails, and maybe you miss some things that are really important, or you need to go back and reference it. So this will give a place on your intranet to say, hey, these are all the things that the communicators or the HR folks said that you need to know about, that put a high priority on it. This will be an ongoing list of notifications. So one source of truth. And then a beautiful display, right? Something that you can use and showcase all of these stories and give them a beautiful display on something that maybe you're having trouble with from a design perspective. It's branded for you, it's your colors, you get to make these choices. The good news here is that this is included with your current subscription. There's nothing new to buy, no upgrades to go through. This will be available to you when it's out. So that's a preview, because we have a lot more to say about that.
Click there.
Yeah. So this is coming this summer. And we're really excited about it. And we'll talk about it more in depth in our next webinar.
All right. So the other side of this, which is really exciting, I feel like Steve Jobs kind of right now, like I'm announcing the next big Apple product, but broadcast and mobile is also going to be available this summer as well. And the cool thing about broadcast mobile is that it is also personalized. So the way that you're sending out these notifications across all these channels, if you have someone who maybe isn't always at a desk, or they're a mobile worker, it can go directly to their phone. And that's a very cool feature. You're able to capture that audience a little better. The other thing is that sorry, I'm getting a little lost here.
That's okay. We get really excited talking about this. You know, we've always been able to integrate with any mobile vendor, like, and that's kind of where we thought that you guys really needed us. We wanted to make it easy to integrate, but so many of our customers were coming to us and saying they didn't want to have another vendor. They didn't want to have another CMS, another thing to manage, another department to have to stand up all of these new processes. So really what Cerkl Mobile really brings to you is the ability to operate within one CMS and make sure that your message is heard everywhere. You publish it once, it's out to everyone that it needs to be out to, and it does not matter what channel they consume it on. Your message is being heard. It's completely channel agnostic. So one of the other bonuses here is that it's a quick implementation. This is not a year-long nonsense app cycle. We can get you up and running very, very quickly, just using a few elements that you might have on your desktop today. So I think that that's really exciting for you guys. And of course, this is totally optional. It is an add-on, but it does create that holistic, personalized cross-channel experience for your staff. And I think that that's really key to any organization that wants to engage people everywhere that they are, especially during this time. And this too is going to be available this summer, and we're really excited to share it with you. So in the follow-up email, we're going to include a link to sign up for our next webinar. I would love to have you guys. It'll be next month on July 22nd. When that webinar, we're going to cover all of this new stuff with broadcast. We're going to talk about channels. We're going to talk about and some of our insights improvements that come with this new feature set. So we're very excited to share it with you guys. Do you have a question?
I do have a question.
Great.
This is kind of a question for me. Some people might be wondering, what is broadcast specifically?
Oh, yeah.
So I just want to make sure we cover that, just so no one's confused on what we're talking about.
Yeah. So, you know, when Cerkl was born, you know, we originally were kind of thinking, how can we solve the newsletter problem, right? How can we make newsletters better? How can we cut down on all of the noise that people are feeling? And that never changed, right? But how people are consuming content has changed just in the time that we've been here with Cerkl. Yeah. And so really we thought about, what are you trying to do with your message? When you're a communicator, what is the goal of your message? You're trying to make it heard. And so we came around to the idea of broadcasting a message. And the nature of broadcast is that it's a signal that you send and you wait and it reaches people where they are. And so that's really the the kind of impetus, the crux of this whole thing is that we want communicators to only have to broadcast one message, and that Cerkl's intelligence and systems is the thing that connects that message to them, right? And so we really cut down on all of that heavy copy and paste, check here, all of this stuff that I had to do so many times. Really cut down on that stuff to get back to great storytelling, engaging audiences, metrics that matter, and the things that really elevate your work and your experience. So that was the idea. So yes, this is might be new to some of you, because I see many familiar names here of people that I've enjoyed really great conversations with as longtime Cerkl customers. And so this is like our next evolution. And so to be here with you guys is very, very exciting.
Yeah. And I think it's the right time now that communication is like it's the most important it has been with this new development in our world.
Yes.
Being able to communicate effectively is a big deal.
Yes, I think people are seeking understanding and clarity, and I think that products like this really help. So it makes me feel really good to be able to give this to people. All right, so we're here for Q&A.
I think we have addressed everything that has come through, but if you do have any, we'll keep it open for a little while longer.
Yeah. So what was your favorite thing that you worked on of these things?
I love the dynamic segment builder.
Yeah.
Of all the projects, even in like Cerkl history, it just seemed to like click, and we were like really vibing with it. And it seemed to really just kind of happen. It was like all of a sudden it was a real product. And let's see, something just came through.
Yeah.
If we're interested in adding mobile, what should we do?
That's such a great question. The first thing I would suggest is you should definitely go ahead and sign up to attend our next webinar. And I would say we'll create a way for you to express your interest. But I'd be happy to talk you through anything that you would like to know about mobile in a separate conversation. But the next webinar will be really key to understand some of the higher level concepts.
Yeah, and they can reach out to us, email. Our emails are pretty easy. It's just first name at Cerkl.com.
We're original, so yes.
So it's Rachel@Cerkl.com and Sam@Cerkl.com if you have any of those follow-up questions that aren't something we can answer live on air.
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing to work on?
I think just tackling the segments project as a whole, we even have more stuff coming down the pipe for segments. Even though it was one of the more difficult things and we weren't able to show it here, but we will be showing it next month, the improvements to insights, I am very, very excited about what that's going to give to people, the data understanding and how they'll better be able to share and demonstrate their value in a way that makes sense to people who only deal in numbers all day, right? So communications is a labor of love, but a lot of us can fail at telling our story, and data can really, really help us. Yeah. Right. So I think that, but all in all, I think this has been one of the more exciting stretches in Cerkl's history to provide improvements that are really based in empathy for the work the communicators do every day. So very excited.
Well, I haven't seen anything else specifically come through.
Well, I love to save time, so I'm going to give you this 10 minutes back. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and I hope you'll join us next month. If you have any follow-up questions, be sure to reach out to us, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys. See you later.